Mia's hand trembled as she grabbed the wine bottle, the cork screeching as it twisted open. The sound echoed in the kitchen, but it did nothing to drown out the rising sense of dread. She glanced at her husband, Ben, sitting at the table, his eyes glued to his phone. She felt the tension in her chest tighten, each breath more difficult than the last. Tonight was supposed to be a simple family dinner, but the air was thick with the kind of tension she had come to know all too well. But hey, before we go any further, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you won't miss out on more intense stories like this. Stick with us to the end. I promise you won't want to miss what's coming. Mia poured the wine, her hands shaking just slightly. She wanted to scream, to lash out, but all she could do was act normal, smile, and hope the evening passed without incident. But deep down, she knew tonight wasn't going to be like the others. Not after everything that had happened, after everything she had put up with. As she moved to set the wine glasses down, the doorbell rang. Ben didn't even look up, but Mia's heart began to race. Eleanor was here. She could feel the change in the room the moment the door swung open, the cold, almost palpable presence of her mother-in-law filling the space. "Hello, Eleanor," Mia said, forcing a smile as she greeted the older woman at the door. She could already feel the sharpness in Eleanor's eyes, the subtle judgment that came with every glance. Eleanor barely acknowledged her greeting. Instead, her gaze was immediately on Ben, her tone icy as she spoke. "Well, it's about time you helped your wife, Ben," she remarked, eyes flicking toward Mia. "Looks like she's doing everything by herself again." Ben gave a small chuckle but didn't respond. The kind of response Mia had come to expect. He had always been passive when it came to his mother, always too afraid to stand up to her. She had never quite understood why, but it didn't matter anymore. Tonight, things would be different. Dinner began, and Mia could already feel the subtle sting of Eleanor's words hanging in the air. Every glance, every comment was carefully calculated to make Mia feel inferior, to remind her that she was never quite good enough in Eleanor's eyes. But tonight, Mia wasn't going to let it slide. "Are you sure you want that much on your plate, Mia?" Eleanor asked, her voice laced with thinly veiled criticism. "You know, a woman should keep herself in shape. A little less on your plate wouldn't hurt." Mia's stomach churned. She could feel the familiar irritation rising in her chest, the same hurt she had learned to swallow over the years. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, Eleanor shot another remark across the table. "You know, it's so important for women to stay trim and elegant. You wouldn't want to fall behind." The comment, though laced with the appearance of concern, was nothing more than a dagger disguised in kindness. Ben, as usual, said nothing. His gaze remained on his plate, as though he hadn't heard a word. Mia's hands tightened around her silverware. She had done this dance for so long, smiling, nodding, pretending everything was fine. But not tonight. She took a deep breath. "I'm fine, Eleanor," she said, her voice calm but firm. "And if you'll excuse me, I don't need anyone policing my plate." Eleanor raised an eyebrow, clearly taken aback by Mia's response. There was a flicker of something in her eyes. Anger, perhaps, but she quickly masked it with a smile. "Oh, I'm just offering advice, dear. No harm meant." Mia didn't respond. She could feel the heat rising in her chest, but she held her ground. She wasn't going to let Eleanor's barbs sink into her today. Not this time. The dinner continued with Eleanor making passive-aggressive comments here and there, each one designed to undermine Mia's confidence. But Mia kept her focus on the meal, on the way the food seemed to dull the sharpness of the tension in the room. That was until the wine glass came. "Mia," Eleanor said, her voice dripping with authority, "would you be a dear and refill my glass?" Mia looked up at her, forcing a tight smile. She reached for the bottle of wine, but as she poured, something inside her snapped. She had been walking on eggshells for so long, trying to please a woman who clearly didn't respect her, and a husband who was too passive to stand by her. This was it. She wasn't going to pour that wine, wasn't going to serve her mother-in-law like she was some kind of servant. "No, Eleanor," Mia said, her voice steady but sharp. "I think you can pour your own wine." The room went silent. Eleanor froze, her glass still in her hand. For a moment, no one moved. The only sound the hum of the refrigerator in the corner. Ben's eyes flicked up to Mia, and for a brief moment, she saw something in his gaze. Shock? Disbelief? But there was no support. There was nothing there to reassure her that she was right, that she was justified. Eleanor's lips tightened. "Excuse me," I said. Mia repeated, her voice a little louder, a little more confident. "That you can pour your own wine." The room felt like it was holding its breath. Ben opened his mouth as if to speak, but Mia cut him off before he could. "Ben, I'm done," she said quietly, but firmly. "I'm done letting her disrespect me in my own home. I'm done being the one who has to always take the back seat, who has to put up with this." Eleanor's eyes narrowed, and Mia could see the storm building in the older woman's eyes. "You've got some nerve, you know that?" Eleanor spat, her voice low, laced with venom. "I'm not putting up with it anymore," Mia replied, her hands shaking with the weight of what she had just said. She had been silent for so long, had allowed Eleanor's cruelty to pass without resistance. But not tonight. Tonight was different. Ben's face drained of color as the words settled between them. "Mia, don't do this," he said, his voice weak, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "We can talk about this. Don't make a scene." But it was too late. Mia had already made up her mind. Eleanor, furious, grabbed her wine glass and threw it at Mia. It was a blur of motion, the glass flying through the air with incredible speed. Mia barely had time to react. The glass shattered against the wall just inches from her face. The loud crash echoed through the room, filling the space with its sharp sound. Mia stood frozen for a moment, her breath caught in her throat. The shattered glass on the floor reflected the brokenness inside her. The brokenness of the marriage, the brokenness of the family. For years she had let this happen, had let herself be treated as less than. But now that glass, shattered against the wall, represented the shattering of everything that had kept her silent. Ben's face turned pale. "Mom, what the hell?" he shouted. But the words came too late. Mia didn't move, didn't speak. She simply stared at the broken glass, her chest tight, her heart racing. The silence in the room was suffocating. She had taken the first step, and now she had to follow through. This marriage, this family, it wasn't worth losing herself over. "I'm leaving," Mia said softly, the words barely above a whisper. She turned toward the door, her decision made. She had nothing left to say, nothing left to prove. Ben called after her, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Mia stepped out the door, her hand trembling slightly on the handle. The cold night air hit her face, a sharp contrast to the heat still pulsing in her chest. The house behind her was silent, the anger and hurt lingering in the spaces she had just left. She wasn't sure where she was going, but she didn't care. All she knew was that she couldn't stay in that house any longer. Not in a place where she wasn't seen, where her worth was always second to everyone else's. She walked briskly, her steps quick and purposeful. The street was empty, save for the distant sound of cars passing by. The world felt strangely quiet, as though it were holding its breath with her. Her mind was swirling. How had it come to this? She had spent so many years in this marriage, trying to please Ben, trying to make everything work despite the constant undermining from his mother. She had let it slide, told herself it wasn't worth fighting over. But tonight, the glass shattered everything, and now she was walking away from it. Ben's voice had been a distant echo in her mind, but it was clear to her now that his pleas had been nothing more than an attempt to hold onto the status quo. He hadn't defended her. He hadn't even tried to stop Eleanor. In fact, he had sat there like a passive observer, too afraid to upset his mother. He had chosen her over Mia time and time again. Mia's chest tightened. She couldn't do it anymore. She couldn't be in a relationship where she wasn't supported, where she wasn't valued. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, snapping her out of her thoughts. She pulled it out, and her heart skipped a beat when she saw Ben's name on the screen. She debated for a moment, then swiped to answer. "Mia, where are you going?" Ben's voice came through, strained and frantic. Please, we need to talk about this. She stopped walking for a moment, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Ben, there's nothing to talk about, she replied, her voice steady. I've been talking for years. Every time your mother crossed a line, I tried to explain how I felt, but it was never enough. It was never enough for you either. There was silence on the other end of the line, and Mia could almost hear him trying to process her words. Mia, you're overreacting, he said finally, his tone defensive. Mom didn't mean it. You know how she is. She didn't. No, Ben, Mia interrupted, her voice cutting through the line. This isn't about her. This is about you. You let her treat me like this. You let her walk all over me, and you never said anything. You didn't protect me. You didn't stand up for me when I needed you. So don't call me overreacting. This has been going on for far too long. Mia, Ben began again, but she cut him off. Goodbye, Ben, she said, her voice cold. I'm done. She ended the call before he could say anything else. Her hands were shaking now, but not from fear. From relief. She had done it. She had finally found the strength to walk away, to stop letting the years of neglect and mistreatment define her. The freedom felt unfamiliar, yet exhilarating. She kept walking, her mind racing. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew she couldn't go back. Not to that house. Not to that marriage. She needed space to breathe, to think, to reclaim who she was before she had lost herself in that toxic web. The sound of a car pulling up beside her made her jump, and she turned to find a familiar figure stepping out. It was Ella, Ben's younger sister. Her face was filled with concern, but there was something else there too. Something Mia hadn't expected. Support. Mia, Ella said gently, walking toward her. You okay? Mia nodded, wiping away a tear before it could fall. I don't know, she admitted. I feel like I've just walked out of my entire life. I don't even know where to go from here. Ella gave her a small smile, offering a soft chuckle. You're stronger than you think. I've seen you put up with things no one should, but you don't have to do it anymore. You're free. Mia looked at her, searching her face. She hadn't expected this kind of support from Ella. For all their closeness, she had never realized that Ella had seen the dysfunction in their family too. But there it was in Ella's eyes, the recognition that Mia had been mistreated, and that it was time for her to take control. You know, Mia, Ella said, her voice a little quieter. I've watched Mom do this for years. I've watched her tear you down, and I watched Ben do nothing. It was like he couldn't see it. But I see you, and I want you to know you're not alone. You're not crazy for feeling the way you do. Mia's heart swelled at her words, and for the first time in a long while, she felt like someone truly understood. Thank you, Ella. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Ella replied, stepping closer and placing a hand on Mia's shoulder. Just know that if you ever need anything, I'm here. I know what it's like to feel stuck, but you don't have to feel stuck anymore. You deserve better. You deserve peace. Mia smiled softly, the weight of her decision lifting just a little. I'm scared, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. What if I regret this? Ella shook her head. You won't. Trust me, the hardest part is already behind you. You walked away, and that's something not a lot of people can do. But you did, and I'm proud of you. Tears welled up in Mia's eyes, but they were different this time. They weren't tears of sadness or fear. They were tears of release, of letting go, of choosing herself for the first time in years. Mia hugged Ella tightly. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid to face it. She knew she had made the right choice, even if the road ahead was uncertain. The hardest part was over. As she pulled away from the hug, Ella gave her one last smile. You'll be okay, Mia. You're going to be just fine. With a deep breath, Mia took a step forward. She wasn't going back. She wasn't going to let her past define her any longer. She was moving forward. She didn't know exactly what the next chapter of her life would look like, but she knew it would be hers, no one else's. As she walked away, she felt lighter with every step, her heart a little fuller, her spirit a little freer. If you've ever been in a toxic situation and found the strength to walk away, remember you're not alone. Like, share, and comment if you've been through something similar. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because more stories of strength and resilience are coming your way.